Okay, just look around for a second. We are quite literally living through a modern epidemic, and it's tricky because it's this silent, paralyzing condition perfectly disguised as, well, productivity. We are drowning in information, obsessed with finding that perfect answer, and constantly caught in this endless loop of paralysis by analysis. The source material for today's explainer actually rips the mask right off this phenomenon. It reveals a really fascinating truth about how we hide behind endless research just to avoid the grit of real-world friction. So, today, we're going to dissect the mechanics of overthinking and map out a radical escape route into pure, unpermissioned execution. Let's get into it.
So let me ask you a question, and fair warning, this might sting just a little bit. Are you actually taking action right now, or are you just preparing to act? I mean, we all know the feeling, right? Downloading 20 different productivity apps, perfectly organizing our folders, and calling it work. The source material points out a huge trap we fall into here. We treat our lack of execution as a lack of knowledge. We tell ourselves, oh, I just need to read one more book or watch one more tutorial or get one more second opinion before I'm truly ready. But listen, this isn't a knowledge problem. It's an addiction to safety.
The absolute core of this issue comes down to confusing two very different things: movement and action. Now, movement is your planning. You're researching, you're theorizing, and it feels great because movement creates this convincing illusion of progress while completely shielding you from the actual risk of failure. It's basically a comfortable disguise for procrastination. Action, on the flip side, is executing. It's risking failure. It's producing a tangible result out there in the real world. Honestly, you can stay in motion for years without ever taking a single meaningful action.
And the reason we get so stuck in movement is pretty simple. It's ego. Your brain is desperately, constantly searching for a perfect answer that guarantees success without any of the pain. But that certainty you're looking for before acting, it literally does not exist. That constant paranoia, that need to predict every single possible outcome, is just a defense mechanism. In fact, the source material argues that certainty is actually the enemy of growth. True confidence is only ever built after you take action, never before.
Okay, so why do we avoid the hard path so instinctively? Well, it comes down to objective biology. Our brains are relentlessly hardwired for homeostasis, which basically means conserving energy at all costs. Learning, changing, and taking terrifying new actions require immense neurological friction. When a path feels easy, that's just your brain firing along old existing neural pathways. But when a path feels hard, awkward, and uncomfortable, that is the literal biological sensation of building new architecture in your mind, and your brain will always try to trick you into taking the easy route just to avoid that friction.
And this sets up what we can call the ultimate paradox of pain. You essentially have two choices here. You can face the immediate, temporary friction of doing the hard thing right now, or you can choose the compounding, massive mountain of regret that hits you years later when you realize you completely wasted your potential. The sources really emphasize this point. Avoiding a small hill of friction today absolutely guarantees you'll have to climb an Everest of regret tomorrow. You always pay the toll. The only question is whether you pay it right now with effort or later with interest.
To make matters even worse, our modern environment actively weaponizes this biology against us. Enter the digital validation matrix. We're constantly out there seeking likes, acceptance, and permission from the digital herd. But think about it. When your self-worth relies on external algorithms and the approval of the crowd, you are literally handing over your authority. You become an anxious mirror, just reflecting what the world wants, rather than generating your own unique signal. And that is a state of absolute powerlessness. Get this. Here's a really surprising reality check. A staggering 55% of human communication is purely physical and primal. We're talking body language, posture, presence. Only a tiny, tiny fraction is the actual words we type or say. To put that in perspective, this proves that despite our obsession with clever online personas and endless digital arguments, our biology is still responding to physical, real-world execution. The digital simulation is largely just noise. The primal physical world is the actual hardware running our reality.
In this primal reality, action is the only true currency of power. Words are incredibly cheap. Think about it. Constantly over-explaining your decisions or arguing with the crowd is actually a confession of weakness. You are implicitly begging for their permission to exist. Action, on the other hand, is unilateral truth. You don't debate it, you just establish it as a fact in the world. Arguing usually just breeds resentment, whereas silent execution literally forces the world to adapt to your moves.
So, to break out of this validation trap, you need a radical mental shift. You must become what's known as a sovereign individual. Think of it like operating as a totally self-contained entity, essentially a nation of one.
A sovereign individual derives their power entirely internally. They establish their own internal borders and operate without ever seeking external permission or waiting around for the crowd's approval. You become your own mental point of origin.
But, and this is a big but, embracing this sovereignty comes with a pretty heavy tax. The more right you are, the more alone you're going to be. Truth is not democratic. It's an individual conquest. When you finally stop seeking the herd's permission and start executing on your own terms, you are going to inevitably separate yourself from the crowd. The sources stress that you really have to embrace this hard path. A period of powerful solitude isn't a punishment. It's actually the throne you sit on when you finally stop following the flock.
So how does a sovereign individual actually operate day to day? Well, you treat yourself like a sovereign nation. Juridically, you require absolutely no justification. You are your own Supreme Court, and you just stop explaining yourself. Economically, your value is self-derived by your ability to produce actual results, not by some fancy title. And for defense, you build a ruthless emotional firewall. If people judge or misinterpret your actions, your new policy is simply not my problem. No external HR department required. Their reactions belong to them, your actions belong to you.
Which brings us to a really stark choice. On one hand, you have the simulation. It's virtual, driven entirely by words and theories, seemingly safe, but constantly quietly humming with anxiety because it fundamentally lacks substance. On the other hand, you have primal reality. It's physical, driven purely by action, inherently difficult, but utterly undeniable. The source texts make it super clear that the real modern tragedy is spending our entire lives in that sterile simulation, totally terrified of the gritty, undeniable mechanics of the real world.
To cross over into that primal reality, you have to master a concept the sources call speaking with your back. Now, this is the ultimate power move. You execute, you deliver a tangible result, and you literally walk away without uttering a single word of justification. Instead of telling the world what you're gonna do, which we all know is a trap, you let the sheer physical force of your completed actions do all the talking. Your departure, your back, becomes the only explanation they ever get.
Okay, so how do we actually implement this today? The sources lay out this brutal but effective pure execution protocol. Step 1. Accept that your first action will be flawed. Just kill the hope of perfection entirely right out of the gate. Step 2. The 5-second rule. The exact moment you know it needs to be done, count down from 5 and physically move your body before your brain can invent a clever excuse. Step 3. Operational silence. Bite your tongue. Do not announce your plans, do not seek feedback, and whatever you do not explain your results.
Look, the knowledge is already in your head. You don't need another map, another tutorial, or another explanation. So the only question left is this. Are you going to stay safe in the simulation, endlessly researching your next move, or are you going to build reality through pure, unpermissioned execution? You just need to shut out the noise, trust your own internal authority, and take the hard, silent path of doing. The choice is entirely yours.